Okay, so today we're in the Lake District about to climb a mountain, and I thought this is a perfect opportunity to see how good GoPro footage can be when you're traveling in and around different places. So all footage that you're seeing right now and for all this is all going to be shot on this GoPro Hero 7 Black. At the end of the video I will show you what kind of settings I had, but from here on out, tell me what you think of this footage. This hike is actually a lot steeper and harder than I was actually anticipating. It's fine, we'll do it.
Is it? I thought you knew it's going to be this steep. Going up a peak.
Yeah, I know, but I guess I'm just naive.
Well, it's usually a 6-mile route and it's currently been condensed to a 2-mile route, so it's obviously going straight up.
It's going somewhere. How's the footage looking? What do you think? Is GoPro the way to go? Okay, so we just realised that the peak when I climb is there. It's raining, weather's coming, but hey, the bonus of the GoPro is it's waterproof. So that's another tick, I suppose, for the GoPro. So we're going to do our classic caption picture. This little bear which we brought back in Yosemite comes to us everywhere we go. Now we're getting another picture of him just here. We thought we were at coming to the top, and then we go over the edge, and no, there it is, in the clouds, just there. So next time I see you, next time you see me, we'll be at the peak. Gosh, there it is, the top. We finally got here. Oh, we're at the top. Finally, we did it. About just over 2 hours, 1 hour 45. Finally. Climbed Helvellyn. Took us about an hour and 45 minutes.
Did it?
Yeah, I climbed it. About an hour and 45 minutes. Felt longer. It was amazing to have this incredible view. But it's been really hot. We're now really cold. So you can't. We kind of dressed.
Bring gloves.
Yeah, bring gloves is the next thing I'd say. But
there's snow up there.
but hopefully you see how good this GoPro can be. I'm going to flip back to when it's nice and warm in my house, where I'm going to explain exactly what settings I use to make the GoPro look like this. But yeah, here's some more footage of us on the way down. I'm back home from the Lake District, and I'm here to talk to you about how I made that GoPro footage look like it did on this GoPro Hero 7 Black. But first of all, I'm going to run through the settings with you. Okay, so these are the settings that I use on this GoPro Hero 7 Black. I went down to here for the video settings, and then first of all I selected my resolution and frames per second. Now I always stuck with 2.7K. Reason for this was because I can keep the hyper smooth stabilization, and that also works between 24 and 60 frames as well, so I was able to keep that no matter what I was doing. And going to 4K and scan, but then you lose the hyper smooth stabilization, so that's why I kept that. Then for the FOV, I kept this in linear, so it's like a normal camera rather than the goldfish eye lens that you usually get with the GoPros, which is what the wide setting is. I have the low light, I just have that off, and then the stabilization I leave as auto, and I had the Pro Tune on. Now this is really important so that you're able to adjust more of the settings down below. Now on the shutter, I keep this auto because this is for run and gun situations, and this menu system is a bit clunky, and trying to change this all the time can be a little bit of a time consuming thing when you're switching from 24 to 60 frames per second, and I still think it looks good, so I usually keep that as auto, but if you wanted to, you could obviously put that on the shutter speed when you change the frames per second, but I just found this a little bit more time and I didn't really want to bother with it. The EV, I had this at 0.5. The white balance I keep as auto, as you'll see on how I color grade. I think this does a pretty good job. For me, again, because the menu system is a bit clunky, going through the white balance and changing it from situation to situation. If the cloud goes in, the sun comes out again, just takes too much time on these kind of cameras. And this white balance on this particular one and the GoPros do a pretty good job. And I think if you're accepting what a GoPro gives you, for the quality you're going to get from the GoPro camera anyway, I don't think you're going to notice much of a difference if you do manual white balance. And because it does such a good job anyway, for me, this is always good. Okay, ISO, so this is really, really important. This is where we're going to make sure that we don't overexpose too much or underexpose too much. So I always keep them in a certain parameter where it won't be noticeable, because I don't want it changing as I'm moving the camera along too much. So I have the minimum at 100 and the max at 400. And yeah, as you saw with the video, it looked pretty good, and I think this was fine, and you didn't really notice when the ISO was going up and down, so this is why I keep it like that. Now the sharpness I have as medium. Some people do have it as low, but for me, resharpening the images in post can take a while, so I don't usually like to do it too much, so I always put that in medium, and then you can re-put that in on post-production, and that usually does a job for me. If you want to not do any sharpening, you can do it on high and leave it for what it is, but that usually doesn't look as good. It looks a bit too processed, so that's why I have it on medium, but you can have it on low if you're happy to sharpen in post. Then color profile, I have this as flat. This gives me more of a creative look that I can put onto the camera. I think this is really, really important. That way you're able to preserve your highlights and shadows a bit better than you would do normally. The raw audio I have off and have the mics on auto. And yeah, and that's basically it. So if you want to have these kind of settings, just rewatch the video. I'll list them in the description as well. Now, if you use them settings, you will get a great image out of your GoPro. But what you'll find out, because you've shot in a flat color profile, you will need to color grade this. So what I'm going to do for you is give you a very quick tutorial on how you can grade this GoPro footage. I'm going to do this on Final Cut Pro, but the principles I'm speaking of can be applied to Premiere Pro or DaVinci Resolve. So don't switch off because you don't use these settings. This could still be helpful for you. So we jump straight into a Final Cut here, and we change our workspaces over to color and effects. And what this does is our Luma, RGB overlay, RGB parade, and vector scope. I'll explain what each of these are as I use them, as I grade. And the first one that we're going to look at is our Luma, which essentially is all of our shadows and highlights and midtones. So what you need to know about this is that anything above 100 and anything below 0 will start to lose details of. So our highlights generally will be above into the hundreds, and our shadows, we don't want them to go below 0. So what we're going to do is go on our base correction here, and we're going to add in a color wheel. These are used quite commonly on most video editing softwares, and the first one we're going to do is adjust our highlights. So we just bring these up here just until it starts to reach 100, and then we go to our shadows and do the same thing but in the opposite sense, and go just before it starts to hit 100. And what you'll see is there's a big difference in the image already. If you turn that off and turn that on, you'll see that it already looks quite good. But then we go to our midtones, and I just always like to bring these down. I just think it gives a nice contrast to the image, but this is just my personal opinion. And then what I like to do when we're just talking about colors is I like to do a separate color wheel, and this is where I add my saturation in. So I just go to the master tool for this and just bring it up until we get a nice image there. And if you see, if I take it off and take it back on, there's quite a nice difference there. Now it's also worth mentioning that when you export any project, usually do lose a little bit of saturation, and the same goes for when you upload to YouTube. So always try and oversaturate more than you would do to compensate for this happening. And then what we would normally do then is go and have a look at RGB Parade. Now what this does is help us to know what colors, where the white balance might be off, and we have this again with our RGB overlay as well. So what you'll see, we're seeing quite a lot of whites here, which is good. This is what we want. If I overlook on here, we're seeing that the red, green and blues are actually quite level with each other, which shows that the auto white balance on the GoPro does do a pretty good job. So I'm just going to leave it there. The adjustments that I will make because of the bit rate of the footage won't be able to get exactly the right white balance, but it's done a pretty good job and I'm quite happy with it. And what I would suggest, if you are new to color grading, I wouldn't suggest playing around with the shadows, highlights and midtones. I would just stick to using the temperature and tint gauges. So the temperature generally will add blues and reds into it, and your tin will add your greens or pink. And if you add green, you'll be taking away pink, and the opposite will be of that. And if you want to take away some blues, you'll add some red into it, and that's how you adjust it. So for example, if I wanted to add more red to it, what you'll see is it increases the reds, but you'll notice that the blue has come down. But if we want to get that blue back up to the level where the rest of them are, we'll just adjust it there, and then we have a nice image. Obviously if we put that blue up, it doesn't really work, it's too much blue, and that's the way that it works. Obviously, as I said, the image is quite good, so I'm not going to play around with it, but I thought I'd give you a brief explanation as to what that means. Now, when you are working with skin, you need to be aware of your vector scope, because this is going to tell you if your skin tones are correct. What if you look at the vector scope here, you'll notice that there is a line going through the color. Now this line here and the colors here is your skin tones. If it is away from this line, that means your skin tones are actually incorrect. But as you can see at the moment, my skin tones are there. This is a graded footage, but if I take away the LUTS effect that is on this, you'll see that the skin tone doesn't actually change on this vector scope when I add it back in. That means I've done the base correction correctly. Because what you gotta remember is that LUTs don't do the work that you think they're gonna do initially. What you need to do is adjust your base correction first, which is what we've done with this image. You need to get that in a state where you're happy with it, and then you add on your look grade. Because if you try and add your LUT on and then adjust it, it just won't go well. So make sure you do this first. So just to go along with that, I'm now happy with my base correction. So I'm gonna add in the LUT look. So what we do here, we go to our look grade, we get the custom LUT over here, which I just get in when I search it on all films on the effects panel, and then I add in the LUT. Now I've got a number of LUTs here that I use. I'm really into the Cine LUTs, which comes from Matti Hupoya, who's the absolute king of color grading, and I've linked his videos about color grading down in the videos below if you want a more in-depth video on that. But I'm really into this abyss setting, so I put that on there. I put it on, and what you'll see when you first add it on, it will actually add in at 100%, which looks awful. What we like to do is go right down to the bottom and we gradually add it on. As a rule of thumb, between 20 and 40% is the sweet spot. So I'm just going to pour this up all the way to about 40%. And yeah, I think that looks about right. And then if I turn that off and turn it on, you'll see it's just added a nice little look to the footage, which is what we want. The LUT grade is an embellishment. It's not the thing you're going to rely on to get the look. It's an embellishment. You have to do the work on the base correction first before you add the LUT in to get the looks you want. If you follow these steps, you will get great looking images. Now obviously that was a very quick and brief color grading tutorial. There's so much more to it. There's so much more in-depth things you need to understand about white balance particularly, but I thought it'd be worth you learning how to do it basically, so if you were to follow these steps, didn't know how to process a fat color profile from a GoPro camera, I thought I'd show you how to do it. If you want to know more about it or you are confused by it, please let me know and I'll try and help you. Don't get discouraged if you're not getting it the first time. With color grading, the more you do it, the better that you get. So just keep going and you will get there. I'm actually been really impressed by the final product I was able to get out of this GoPro. I would highly recommend it to somebody who's going around traveling and wants a nice, easy, quick and compact video setup for them for their travels. It's very durable, it's very compact, and it's a really, really good option for some people. Bear in mind, I didn't use any external mics on this trip, so all the audio you're hearing is from the GoPro itself, and I think it does a pretty good job. Obviously, you're going to always make some kind of a sacrifice with the image. It's not going to be as good as some of the bigger, more expensive mirrorless cameras or full frame cameras, but if you're happy with this GoPro image, then you wouldn't be worried about them little aspects. So I would highly recommend this. And remember, this is actually a couple of generations old, so if you went for the GoPro 9, the footage you'll get will be incredible. Some of the footage I've seen some people get from it is amazing, so I'd always highly recommend the GoPro as a vlogging setup. I really hope you enjoyed this video. Give it a like if you found it helpful. It really helps me out. Subscribe if you want to see more of me and more of my videos. And if you need any help, as I said, please let me know down in the comments. And hopefully I will see you on the next video. See you later.